Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. Now, last week I gave a talk to a bunch of young adults, and somebody told me that I have a soothing voice and they love listening to this podcast. That is amazing because I didn't know this. Because the only time I think anybody's ever commented on my voice was when I called my friend in high school. I remember who it was. His name was Jonathan, and I'd known him since like kindergarten. And in high school, I called him up back in the day before cell phones. I called my house phone from my house phone to his house phone, and his mom picked up. And I was like, "Hi, could I speak to Jonathan, please?" And she's like, "Yeah, 1 second." And then she said, "Jonathan, it's that kid with the weird voice." And I was like, "Yo, what? Can you at least cover the phone? Like, were you raised by trolls in some weird mountain somewhere? Where did you grow up?" Anyway, that obviously stuck with me. So that was my only reference point. Anyway, this is just a little about me, folks, a little about my problems. That's not what today's about. Today on the episode, I actually have slides. If you want, you can check them out on YouTube. But if you just want to listen to this sweet, sweet voice of mine, then I'm just going to unpack 6 points about the different lies that you believe that porn has been teaching you, whether you know it or not. It's unbelievably important to understand which beliefs you have that are objectively, fundamentally true, that come from a universal source, something that is truth itself, something that's transcendent, right? And which beliefs that you have that you hold true that are complete lies, and specifically lies that you learned from porn. Because, to be honest, if you look at the stats everywhere we go, there's always way more young ladies than there are young men who are ready for the blessing. And a huge reason is that so many of these young guys don't go to the blessing because they don't know their own worth. Because porn has been telling them for years that they suck, that they're not worthy of love, that they should give up. And so they do. They acquiesce. We want to dispel that hard. We want to punch these lies in the face and replace them with truths. But that's what this episode is about. So why don't you come and listen? And I'll just be here. So let's see you on the other side there. Welcome back, everybody. So I'm going to be recording this podcast together with slides. If you want to see them, you can watch the video on YouTube. It's just for a little bit of visual stimuli. But what's funny is that we have a software that helps us to make slides because we make so many slides. We come up with the content, right? But we get it to help formulate it into some sort of visual approach. And it comes up, it's got AI and it makes visuals, right? And what's weird is some of the visuals in this presentation that I have for you look shockingly like me. They kind of resemble me more than they look like me. But it's not in a flattering way. It's not in the type of way that you'd want to be represented by AI. And I can't tell if AI is kind of trying to tell me something, if it sees me like this or what, because I didn't say, "Hey, here's a picture of me. Make them look like a really gross kind of version of me." But instead, it just came up with these pictures, which I don't know how I feel about it. But today, I just wanted to really unpack this idea that porn is teaching you. As much as we're consuming it, it's teaching us so much. And we often don't see that. We just think that the way that we see the world just kind of is the way that it is. And we don't understand that our perspective is tainted by a lot of brainwashing from various sources. One of the main ones being porn, if you're a consumer. So I want you to understand this more. These aren't typical points. I'm coming at it from a different angle so that you can see a little bit more the insidious nature of how porn has been teaching you to see yourself and the world around you in very unhelpful ways, okay? And again, if you're looking at this visual, I can't stop looking at this kid's face being like, this is what I look like to myself when I don't love myself, which is he's looking outside and it's a rainy day. There's range. Okay. So again, similar guy. This could totally be me. But one really important point is that so many people, when they start consuming porn, start to view their own physical or emotional or mental discomfort as some sort of emergency that needs to be resolved immediately, right? So emotionally, you think about it, you just have a difficult conversation with a family member, right? Let's say you're a younger person, a young adult, and you have a really awkward conversation with your parents and you don't feel heard. You feel like they're trying to control you. They don't listen to you. You want to be understood. You have a point that you want to make and they're just not up for it. And they're just disallowing you from something, or just, it's really, it just leaves you feeling frustrated, right? So you leave, let's say you live in your own apartment, you leave their house and you go back to your own house and you just feel unfulfilled. You feel uncomfortable, awkward. And so porn just becomes this thing. It's like, I don't like how I feel, so let's just erase that by watching porn, right? Mentally, this happens a lot when you've been working really hard at something and you say, I deserve a break, because you've been studying hard or you've been working on a project that requires a lot of your mental attention. On the other side of that, it's very easy to say, well, I've been good, so I could just one scroll, just one 10 minutes, just 30 minutes on Instagram, just another video, just 2 hours, right? This is a part of, you just don't even feel comfortable with the fact that you've exerted yourself. It's common too in exercise where you're not feeling good about your body, or you just feel like, oh man, I need to work out more. So you start going to the gym or you find some sort of exercise to do. And then you exercise because you felt fat or you just felt out of shape. But now that you've exercised, you feel particularly like, well, I worked hard, so I deserve to reward myself. And then you have junk food, and then that completely negates the exercise that you just did. Very similarly, but with emotions and with our brain, they don't necessarily, we can't say, I'm going to go exercise my brain, but that's what it looks like when you've had a really long conversation. If you're an introvert, it's like being outside, being at a networking event is exhausting, right? So you're like, I want to go back. So not being able to just sit with your discomfort, needing some immediate form of escape from your discomfort is a sign that you've been trained to run away from even the slightest amount of awkwardness or discomfort, right? So the more that you do that, the more that it shrinks your tolerance. And then like any ounce of discomfort needs to be nullified immediately, meaning, okay, I was just talking to somebody who gave me a great example. They said that when they go to school, they're in college, when they go to class, everybody's sitting, who's there early, sitting in class. It could be a lecture hall, and they're all on their phones. They can't just sit there. They're on their phones because you don't want to just sit there, because then you might look like a loser, right? Or you might have that uncomfortable eye contact with somebody. So you just stare at your phone. And a lot of people with headphones too. So they don't even exist. They're not in that space. They're in their phones. And then this person that was telling me this said, oftentimes, if they don't understand something in class, they'll also go straight to TikTok. So any semblance of, discomfort mentally because it's a challenging question that they're being asked in class, or just environment, then immediately gone. They can't handle it for a second. So the wrong question is, how do I stop feeling this? And then instead start asking, what is the feeling that I'm experiencing, and what is it trying to tell me about myself? Like, being awkward, it happens. I don't know what my percentage is, but I'm 50% super suave, very amiable and warm. I can be in environments, I can make new friends anywhere. And then the other half of me is like super awkward, says the exact wrong things in social settings, right? So being able to just be awkward and figure out, why am I being so awkward, and to work through that is so much better than, man, this is uncomfortable, I need to run away. So the main point here is, do not start to hold this belief. And if you already do hold the belief, really challenge it, that discomfort is something to be escaped with priority, with urgency, because it's simply not true. It's not the case. Okay. The next thing is that you're a consumer and not a creator, right? So porn offers stimulation without any courage, without any initiative, without any growth in particular. So it trains us to get the rewards without the effort. So typically, sex is something that is on the other end of a lot of communication and growth, right? When you're in a healthy marriage, you don't just demand sex whenever you want it. That is I don't know, that's super unhealthy, right? To demand something, to expect something all the time when you want it, a la carte. That's not how life is meant to be. And the people who live like that are really unhappy. If it were true that getting whatever you want whenever you want equates to happiness, then all royalty ever would have been super happy. They totally weren't. Celebrities would be super happy. They can't stay married. They can't be happy for long. Uh, it's it's simply not the case. It's a convenient thing that we'd like to believe, but is really not true. Growth feels good after you've done it. It doesn't always feel good while you're growing, right? So, for instance, if you're in a relationship with somebody and you're just not on the same page, you feel really awkward, you're complaining about them, you're fighting with them, a part of you wants to run away. A part of you just wants to be like, why don't you just agree with me? Why don't you just do what I want you to do, right? That's the immature side of yourself. But when you can learn how to listen to the other person's perspective, when you can give them a little bit more credit, when you can offer them the benefit of the doubt, that is growth. And it's not comfortable all the time, but it leads to you being able to love them more. And when on the other end of that, there's some sort of reward, like intimacy, like sex, like some sort of like celebration of being at a new level, that's fantastic. And it's deep because it's so much more than the physical act of sex. It's the celebration of two minds that have grown, two hearts that feel closer together, two spirits that are on a path that are more solidified, right? But you don't get any of that with porn. You skip all of that and you just go straight to the stuff that is not about those two humans interacting in any meaningful way. It's just straight sex. Okay. So that habit trains the mind to browse, to skip, and to replace rather than rebuild. Instead of like associating joy and celebration with growth, you want all the fun without any of the growth. That makes you a little kid. And that's what, porn definitely stunts our growth. It causes us to act like little kids. We get grumpy when we don't get whatever we want, whenever we want. That's not healthy at all, right? So desire gets quickly separated from responsibility, and wanting something no longer leads to effort. So and the weird part is even when you get what you want, you don't feel fulfilled. It's not fulfilling because you got the external without the internal. It's like how Americans eat so much food, but they're also malnourished because they're not getting any nutrients because we eat a lot of garbage. And that's the same with garbage relationships, garbage entertainment. It makes us full and overstimulated, but not satiated, right? So we're in a very consumer focused society where we treat everything like a commodity, even like people, right? That's what the dating scene is. If you look at the average relationship lasts about the average time you would keep a phone before you want an upgrade, right? Before you start feeling like, oh, my phone is so old. I feel I need a new one, even though you totally don't, right? But you feel like you do. It's the same. We've done that now with relationships. Okay. This is the consumer mindset. Next one. When we're stuck in this, like what porn teaches us is that we are not good enough. Like this is a constant narrative that we hear from people who are stuck in consuming porn is they just feel like crap and they don't feel worthy of the blessing. So many people, the reason that they don't go to the blessing is because they have no self-worth, and it's because porn has trained them to believe that they suck, right? So more that there's nothing kind of biological or evolutionary about porn. There's no place that porn has in our humanity growth. And one example is that there's no animals that just spy on each other having sex and feel gratified by doing that. That's just weird. You're just watching other people do something exciting, and then you get excited about it, but you didn't, it's got nothing to do with you, right? Um, and so the other side of what porn, like when you watch other people have sex, which is what porn is, and then after that is done, you feel weird and lonely and you feel a little bit like a loser because you weren't a part of it. Because at the end of the day, you were just staring at your phone, right? So that's when you start feeling unworthy. You start to feel like, well, why can't I have that? Well, what's wrong with me, right? I'm staring at all these people and it looks like so much fun, but I suck. And another layer of this is that you can never have what they have because it's all fake. It's all manufactured. Nothing about porn is real. They are actors playing characters. This is not about that moment. It's about it's, a scaled out version of Instagram where nothing's real. It's all presentation, right? It's not about the real stuff. So it's very easy to feel completely like a loser as soon as you're done with a porn binge, right? And sexuality becomes this weird thing where it's like a performance because you're trying to perform like you're watching other people. It's like little kids, I remember watching Indiana Jones growing up, and immediately I remember creating a costume, and I had a hat, and I felt like Indiana Jones, and I felt cool like him. I felt daring like him, even though I was just in my backyard like a little twerp, just in imagination land.
Let's pause for just a second. What would it feel like to live without hiding, without shadows? That's possible. And it starts with not doing this alone. You can get support totally for free. We're here for you guys. Check it out. And highnoon.org. We're waiting for you.
That's what porn is. You see people, monkey see, monkey do, and you try to, but they're acting, and then you're acting like they're acting. And then it's just like, it's all just a performance. And that's why when you bring the porn mentality into the real world, it never satiates you because it's not genuine. It's not real. It's all just acting. You're just copying instead of creating something real and true and valuable. You're emulating. You're a carbon copy of something that once was real. This is what happens when you observe other people for too long. You start copying them and it never feels right for you and especially for the other person. Because now you're kind of trying to fabricate an experience that is just this fake thing in your mind through that person, and they feel completely used. Okay. So what's available to me determines what I deserve. This is something like 24/7, I can get whatever I want. That's what I deserve. I deserve whatever I want. It's completely curated and manufactured. It's like demanding a certain type of food that it always looks like Instagram all the time, every meal. That's ridiculous. If you have somebody else that cooks for you, it doesn't make sense. But also unlimited novelty. Man, it's a form of madness. Honestly speaking, I haven't watched porn in, I don't know, been like 17 years or something like that. Since I joined the church, I was lucky enough to I was at an age where I could see that, yeah, this stuff is killing me. And I just went cold turkey. Right. And so obviously the images never leave your brain. Like the specific images maybe fade over time, but the architecture of porn is always a part of your psyche. Right. But you can disassociate from it. You can say, oh, that's that thing over there, rather than have porn be kind of like the puppet master that's pulling the strings of your mind and your expectations all the time, right? So when you're really steeped in the porn world, you have these expectations that life is supposed to be like that. I remember one analogy was that, learning about sex from porn is like learning how to drive from the Fast and the Furious franchise. That's just ludicrous and bananas. Like, I think there's I only ever see the commercials or the trailers or whatever because I've never seen the Fast and the Furious. Anyway, I have my reasons, but I remember seeing I think The Rock was in it for a while in the Fast and the Furious, and they were driving a car out of a helicopter or a plane, and they were shooting each other. There's all this stuff going on. It was complete mindless junk, right? Whatever. But imagine like that's how you learn how to drive as a 15-year-old kid. You go out with your parents, you're like, all right, so for today's lesson, we are going to take this Ferrari and drive it off of a mountain. But don't worry, we have parachutes. I'm pretty sure you'll get it first try. Like what? That's bananas. Porn is so, it's like learning how to walk from Usain Bolt videos, at the Olympics when you're like one. It's just ridiculous. It's just obviously it's like a caricature of reality, right? And your brain gets confused with the entertainment and the reality. And so the things that make you so stimulated through porn has nothing to do actually with the real stuff, which is intimacy with the other person, being present with that other person, hearing their emotional cues, their mental cues, their breathing, all this stuff is completely out the window because you're just hyper focused on wanting this experience. Just no, you're trying to curate this really abnormal, unhealthy experience, right? Especially if you look at porn, there is no loving words being said during porn. Think about that. Think about that one basic point. They never whisper, I love you. It's not about that at all. The only words that they say to each other is actually quite hateful and derogatory. Think about that. That's what's informing your view of sexuality. It's bananas, okay? So, and this brings me to the fifth point, which is another person's interior world is irrelevant to my desires, which means that you do not factor in how the other person feels when you're hyperstimulated and you want something. So you just see them as a vehicle to fulfill your pleasures. That's what porn teaches you. It's so selfish. And we've encountered so many people. Obviously, I want to say wives, but it goes both ways. But it's, our typical experience is we have way more men in Ascend than women. We know that pretty much every guy struggles with porn and half the females do, right? But for this particular instance, we get this complaint a lot from women that they feel very used by their husbands sexually because they're not present emotionally during sex because they're just in their head somehow watching porn in their brain while having sex with their wife, which means that you're not even really there to make love. You're just there to be bodies humping, So it reduces the amount of consent too when you live like this because you're not really thinking about their emotional state. So even though you're just drilling for a yes, you're looking for a yes, you're looking for that consent, but are they really on board emotionally? Because we've seen this play out many times where a husband will have sex with his wife in the beginning of their relationship, but the wife isn't really being fulfilled because it's not really about her. The husband's just essentially masturbating on his wife or in his wife or around his wife or whatever. And it's not fulfilling for the wife. So she starts to feel very used and she associates sex with discomfort, with awkwardness, with a feeling of loneliness. So of course, over time, she's going to want to stop doing that because it just makes her feel further away from her husband, right? And again, it can go both ways, but we typically hear, the story from one side more than the other, right? And largely it's because of the self-referential desire, right? Which is, I'm stimulated for sex, and so you're going to give it to me, and it's all about you. Even though you want them, it's for your own sake. And nobody wants to be used. Nobody healthy. Although there's some that could argue, but that never comes from a healthy place, right? No healthy person wants to be used and abused at all, okay? And this is something to really consider because the blessing is all about the other person. It's about building love and trust. It's about building a foundation of communication and intimacy, like these beautiful things where you feel together, right? When you're sick, you want your spouse to really come look for you and say, oh my God, are you okay? What can I do to help you? That goes both ways, right? But that is for every aspect of life. You would want your spouse to be like, how can I help you? How can I be of service to you? How can I make you happy, right? And sexually, same thing. And that doesn't happen when you have a pornified brain. You just say, how can you help me? Rather than how can I help you? The last point is this, that, this becomes a weird inner reality. I just spoke with a group of young adults last week, and I was just talking about, how much is God represented in your scrolling patterns? If you to look through your search history on your phone or your computer, how much does it represent the person that you'd like to be? And how much was God really a part of the equation? And how much of it was just you being led by your urges to really dark places, right? So when you start just following your urges through the dark web, and I don't mean the actual dark web, I just mean the dark parts of the web, then you start to form a second reality. You have your physical life and your online life, and they're incongruent. One is very sketchy and represents your association with negative emotions and sex. You've now married all sorts of discomfort with something endlessly important, which is sex. And now they coexist in the same pool, and you do not want them in the same pool. Imagine that. Imagine leading your life where you only associate God and good, healthy feelings together with your experience of sexuality. That's how we're meant to be. Like 100%. We're not meant to associate shame, hatred, loathing, resentment with sex. But that's exactly what happens when we start to live a pornified life. When we're angry, we go to porn. When we're uncomfortable or awkward or resentful and we don't know what to do with it, we go to porn. And that infuses two worlds that have nothing to do with each other normally. Yeah. So what ends up happening is you have this duality. You're living two lives at one time, and that just doesn't work for any length of time. Okay, you only have one mind, one heart, one spirit, one body. So you can't lead two lives for any length of time. It starts to rip you apart. Eventually you have to choose one or the other. And unless you're willing to do the work, then typically people gravitate towards their lower selves, especially in this day and age, because that's what society keeps on asking us to do, is just follow your urges and become a slave to your urges, to your lower self, and then justify yourself. Rather than working through your stuff, being liberated, and only associating sex with your ideals, with the person that you want to be. Okay? So, last slide here is, all of these things that you've learned that porn has taught you about yourself can be unlearned. And you can relearn who you want to be based on your ideals. And that's precisely what High Noon is all about. We have an Ascend 21-day challenge this summer. We have Ascend Always Running if you're struggling with porn. We have Core if you're not struggling with porn, but you just want to prepare for marriage, right? And that is really working on the ideal. Who do I want to be? What does it mean to be successfully single? How do I really become the first blessing, a mature person who has control over my fate, over my destiny? That's not being controlled by my emotions and by my lower self, right? This is amazing. And if you are blessed in marriage and you struggle with porn, then we have Ascend for you. And if you don't struggle with porn, we have Radiant, which is how do we experience God's love for us within our marriage? How do we experience true intimacy, emotionally, mentally, physically, right? How do we experience the fruits that God has been piling up in this giant mountain of blessings that he has for us, that Heavenly Parent has for us, that we just don't know how to access because we're too busy fighting or feeling insecure? So everything that we've learned, we can relearn. If it's untrue, we can learn the truth, and we can disassociate ourselves and distance ourselves from the lies that we learned. This is all very much possible if you're willing to put in the work. And it's always going to be work. But you know what's more work? Struggling every day. Imagine you're on an island and it's not a great island. It's kind of, you're running out of food, you're stressed out, it doesn't have a great culture, and you see another healthy island over there, but you're going to have to swim there. It's going to take work. Is it not worth the effort to swim to that island where, your needs are met, where it's like the island that you're meant to be at, rather than struggling on this one island, just every day spending all sorts of energy just fighting to survive, rather than thriving on that other island over there? And yes, it's going to take work to get there. That's the life that's waiting for you, is working on chipping away at kind of unlearning certain habits that you have and learning the habits that'll allow you to be your ideal self. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. These were kind of different angles, different approach, different conversation, but the whole point of High Noon is to help you figure out what is holding you back, what is blocking you from your ideal self, what are these shadows, and to create community around getting rid of any shadows. As an individual, core, as somebody who's struggling with porn or masturbation, Ascend, as a couple, and Radiant, and any awkwardness that you might have with your kids, that's School of Love. We got you covered. Just put in the work and you'll see that life just starts to flow much more seamlessly, and life becomes what you envisioned it, rather than just reacting to life constantly and always feeling like you're barely treading water. It's been a pleasure, everybody. God bless your souls. I'll see you sometime, I'm sure, in the future.
A strong marriage doesn't start at the blessing. It starts right now in how you live, how you grow, and who you surround yourself with. If you've been passive, unsure, or just hoping things will work out in your future blessing, this is your chance to change that, to prepare with purpose, to walk with others who are taking this seriously. If that's the kind of foundation you want in your future, guys, check us out. Join our community at highnoon.org. Totally free. We will see you there.